Okay, welcome and thank you for tuning in. My name's Mark Russell. I'm on the left-hand side of the screen in front of you here, and my colleague Peter Bullen is on the right-hand side of the screen. Peter and I work in the Blended Learning Unit, which is a Centre for Excellence in Teaching and Learning at the University of Hertfordshire. We both also work around the School of Aerospace, Automotive and Design Engineering. We're going to take a few moments of your time to talk to you about managed learning environments, and essentially we're going to do this with a brief conversation, sharing some thoughts and sharing some things that interest both Peter and I. So Peter, I wonder if I can ask you to maybe start by giving us a few thoughts on what you think constitutes a managed learning environment.
Thanks, Mark, and hello to everyone. Good question. I think it really depends on what level, how you define this, but let's sort of think of it in the broadest possible way. I would say a managed learning environment is a portal into the university from anywhere in the world. And it enables access to all the university's digital resources, providing access anytime from anywhere. You can think of it as well as a virtual space supporting students and staff in a sort of structured and managed way. And I think then you want to say, well, what's the difference between a managed learning environment and a virtual learning environment? Well, the managed learning environment links the virtual learning environment, and this picture really represents this picture here represents the learning element, linking that to the management information system, the student record system, if you like, and this represented by this picture on the right, with the cables connecting this one to this one. So the virtual learning environment is the part you can relate to a program or to a course. And what makes it managed is when you link it to the other systems in the university, like the MIS, and also to the other digital resources.
Well, I think that's a great point, is that connectivity that really appeals to me, because when we start thinking about the connectivity between the managed learning environments, which is the virtual learning environment, and the management information systems, I'm also minded of the connectivity that those facilities provide in terms of connecting to the students, how universities connect to the students, and also how they allow additional connectivity between the students, so student-to-student connectivity, and also how a teacher might relate and connect to the students as well. And so what I've got here is just taking that a little bit further, is just a few thoughts around some of the functionality of the modern managed learning environments and what they may look like. So, for instance, you might think about managed learning environments offering some news items to the students, and that might be typically how the university speaks to the students via some particular relevant news items. And as Peter said earlier, when we were talking about virtual learning environments, naturally one of the big things of a virtual learning environment is the resources and the connection that the virtual learning environment provides to the students to the learning resources. But a really smart use of a virtual learning environment is the way that we can connect to students around learning activities, and the image I'm trying to describe here is just thinking through the complexity of learning activity that we might wish to engage our students in, and the different pathways that they may actually take as they navigate through the resources and through the activities that we are putting in front of them. So there's a few of the functionalities in terms of the way we communicate with our students through virtual learning environments and managed learning environments. And for me, what the beauty of that is that we allow students to work in isolation if they so desire. So we've got students connecting to a managed learning environment in a space and at a time that best suits them. We also allow opportunities for students to work with each other in groups, and managed learning environments are great for providing that additional connectivity that I spoke about earlier, for facilitating online group work, and also for providing another access to the teacher, so that there's a managed way that the students can connect to the teacher outside of normal teaching times. And all of that is particularly important for me because students come from a diverse population today, and they have very, very busy lives. And the managed learning environment provides an opportunity to personalise the students' engagement with activities and resources in a way that they can plan and navigate and use that suits them as individual learners.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I think that when you're thinking about these technologies, learning teaching isn't technology driven, so you have to think about a framework in which you can use these technologies. And the framework that we like to use is this one here, that's 10 years old, but actually very, very relevant. Every one of these points means something today. So this is Chickering and Gamson's principles for a good undergraduate or good teaching and learning. And I think you can relate each of these bullet points here to some of the things that Mark has mentioned. I mean, an example would be straight away, if we home in on this, give prompt feedback, is one of the issues that the National Student Survey has raised about students' feelings that staff are not giving them good and prompt feedback. Well, the virtual learning environment will provide opportunities through the discussions, for example. So the staff can communicate with students, we can use students as a resource, and students can communicate with each other. If we structure it properly, the technology, the discussion functionality within the VLE provides opportunities to improve how we give feedback. And that, I think, is the point. And this framework illustrates those points about using technology. Another example could be that, I suppose discussions again is very relevant to encouraging contact between students and staff. Again, if you tell students how you're going to use discussions, you set some expectations, and then you can use the technology to actually achieve this. So, for example, why use email? You know, many staff I talk to say, students are always emailing, I've got so many emails, I can't cope. It's a missed opportunity because the students asking the questions, you'll find that other students are interested in those questions. So if you tend to use discussions more than emails, then you're sharing that learning experience. So there are many more examples. I mean, encouraging active learning. Some VLEs, in fact most of them probably now have functionality such as wikis. So you could imagine students working together to produce content, working on group projects, extending what they might do in their face-to-face. So there's each one of these you can relate to some of the functionality that you'll find in VLEs, and it actually sets the framework for how you use them in learning and teaching. I think this is one of the most important points, that what we do actually benefits the students, and the example of prompt feedback was obviously a benefit. But some data that shows how much students use these sorts of technologies is here. StudyNet is our University of Hertfordshire's managed learning environment. And here's some data, this is just logins over the last few years. But most interestingly, if you can look immediately at how the number of logins has gone in 2003-04 to what it was last year. So doubling. The student numbers have increased slightly, but nowhere near the rate of this increase in use. You can see other things like the benefits of flexibility. That in 2003-04 we can see 1,600 logins on Christmas Day. Interesting to know if people are having a bad Christmas. You can see in the next year that there are more logins from outside the university systems, indicating again the need for flexibility, how students are studying from at different times and in different places. And again, if you look at the timing, the number of logins in the early hours of the morning. So this illustrates use, it illustrates that there's a need, and it illustrates the flexibility of use. I think the last point, also illustrates the variety of media and the variety of functionality that students are accessing. And you know, we have looked into these sorts of the media, looked at this in much more detail, and there's some interesting information on our website which actually talks a bit more about the details of these logins.
I think it's fair to say as well that quite honestly, if the students weren't getting anything out of that experience, that MLE experience, then we wouldn't have seen anything like the number of logins that we're pointing to here. And so, you know, we're clearly doing something right in joining up our MLE with our class activity. The University of Hertfordshire is a campus-based university. We're not talking about providing distance learning, and we're not talking about providing e-learning. We're talking about supporting campus-based students with e-learning opportunities and the opportunities that managed learning environments brings. So this is, if you like, additional activity and additional opportunities to engage our students outside of class to supplement our class activities. And I guess that point brings me nicely on to trying to wrap up some of what we've been talking about, which is quite clearly with the technology, and in particular with managed learning environments, and the incredible connectivity that they provide, both to other students, both to the teachers, to the resources, and of course to the outside world. We've got a great opportunity now to either extend our class activity, enhance our class activity, and also in some instances we might think about replacing some of our class activity where it might be more efficient or effective as a method of engagement through the managed learning environment. So we've got great ways to extend, enhance and possibly replace some of the good work that's going on already. And I think managed learning environments are bringing some great opportunities to help us realise those desires. If I was briefly to move to some conclusions from a very, very brief overview, I would probably say that managed learning environments do little more than provide opportunities. The opportunities they provide are great and far-reaching, and they do exist around, as I've said, those connections and the additional connectivity. An opportunity, as Peter has described, to provide flexibility to our students in the way that our students can engage with us. And again, just thinking through about different ways of student engagement. And there's different functionalities and different opportunities that we might want to think about in terms of what a managed learning environment is doing for us as a teacher and how it's supporting that teaching, learning and assessment process. We have absolutely no doubt and a whole range of evidence, and Peter's shown that when he spoke about the numbers of students, that managed learning environments don't necessarily replace campus-based activity. They've got a great place to support that existing expert behaviours around class-based activities, such that we're now in a position to extend the classroom, enhance the classroom, or replace the class activity.
Yes, thanks, Mark. I think one of the things that we have really mentioned is what are the benefits to staff, and I think it's really important to think about MLEs and how they can support staff. And there are a couple of ways one can think of immediately. The very fact that it's a managed environment, and therefore it helps to manage courses and course material, and it makes it easy to manage your workload, and therefore to actually encourage the students as well to manage their time and therefore benefit staff time. And I think the other area, and I touched on this when I talked about communication, is that the benefits to staff in terms of ease of communication, especially if it's integrated with management information systems, because it's easy to contact students, it's easy to talk to students through discussions, it's easy to email groups. All those things make it much, much easier for staff to manage their course and therefore to manage their load. Those are some simple examples. There are many. I can see at the bottom of this slide there's a reference to the website I mentioned. There are resources on there that you might be interested in, and there's also under the students, the link to the student experiences, there's a link to StudyNet, so you can just see a model of StudyNet if you're interested to look at our managed learning environment further.
Thank you for looking in.